Alright, so let's take a look at similarities and differences when we solve equations and inequalities. So if you'll notice, we've got a bunch of equations and similarly some inequalities here, okay? Alright, so if we start with number 1, first we'd subtract 10 from both sides. So 12 minus 10 would give us 2 equals x divided by 4. Then we would times by 4, and we get 8 equals x. Okay. Looking at problem 2, same idea. For the inequality, we subtract by 10, then we times by 2. Or, wow, 2, I meant 4. So we get 8 is less than or equal to x. Okay. So, if we look at these, okay, we should notice a few things. But let's try another one. Let's jump down to 5 and 6. We'll come back to 3 and 4. Okay, so if I'm thinking about what's happening to the variable, first I'd add 9, then I'd divide by 4. So we go in reverse order and do the opposite. So I times by 4, giving me n plus 9 equals 12. Subtract by 9, and I get n equals 3. Okay, if we look at what 6 is, with n plus 9 divided by 4 is less than 3, still if we knew what n was, we'd still add 9 and then divide by 4. So I still start by timesing by 4. And then subtracting by 9. I get n is less than 3. Okay? So, hopefully what we notice, okay, even if we distribute, that as we solve these inequalities and equations, we should notice some similarities. Okay. All right. Even if we look at number 9 and 10. Okay, so seeing all these, we should be able to realize, if we look back here, okay, this should have been and. Okay, what do you notice about the equations and inequalities that is similar? What we notice is we are using the same steps. Okay, we're undoing the problem, doing the inverse operations. Okay, we solve it same way as equations. Okay, so we solve them the same. Okay, now we should also notice number 8 we didn't finish, right? Because when we divide by negative numbers, so this negative 9 right here, we actually have to flip the inequality. Okay, so if I go back up to number 4, and I solve this one, again, because I'm dividing by a negative number, the inequality here has to go the opposite direction. Okay, whereas with an equal sign, it doesn't matter. Still the same steps, but that inequality sign now had to flip. Okay, and that has to do with the fact that when we're multiplying or dividing by negatives, okay, we've got a number line here. If we multiply by a negative number or divide by a negative number, if I started with a positive number, it becomes negative. Okay, if I start with a negative number, it becomes positive. This is kind of a good rule of thumb to pay attention to. Okay, because we take the starting and we change it. And what that does is it changes the whole direction it's going. Okay, so like if I had negative 20 or positive 20 and I divide it by a negative 1, it now becomes negative 20. Okay, and if something's bigger or smaller, because it's flipping it over, that whole direction thing changes as well. Okay, so that's kind of what to think about. So if we go here, the differences, what is different is when we multiply or divide by a negative number, we change the direction of the inequality. Okay. So that's the only thing that's different. Okay. Only thing that's different here. So let's finish up these problems. Okay. On number 11 and 12, if I see fractions that have the same denominator, I'm going to times by that denominator to begin with. So then I end up with negative 6 times x plus 4 equals negative 76. Then we can distribute negative 6x minus 24 equals negative 76. Add 24. We get negative 52. Right? Divide by negative 6. We get x equals whatever negative 52 divided by 6 is, which I believe 6 goes into 48 8 times. So I guess it'd be a positive, wouldn't it? Positive 8, and we'd have 4 6 left over, which can translate to 2/3. So basically 8.6 repeated. Okay, now for my inequality, it's the same process, right? So the difference is, I should notice, because I divided by a negative, my inequality is actually going to change direction. Okay, but if I wanted to, I could still work it out and see that we get the same exact thing. The only difference is I change my inequality sign, its direction, so that I can get my answer. Okay? And that's really what all of these are doing, so we don't really need to keep doing them, okay, twice. So I will just go and do the inequality versions just to give us a few more inequality examples, but everything else is pretty much the same. So subtract 9.162. So we get v divided by 2.8 greater than or equal to 2.285 times by 2.8, and we get v is greater than or equal to 6.398, which, if we needed to do the equation, same exact thing. Alright, number 15. I can distribute that negative 6 to get negative 30 plus 48n is greater than 24 minus 6n. Got to get the n's on the same side, so I add a 6n to both sides. Okay, that gives me 24 is less than negative 30, plus that becomes 54n. Add 30 to both sides, and I get 54 is less than 54n. Divide by 54. That becomes 1 and 1, and I get 1 is less than n, which would also be 1 is equal to n, right? Because it would be the same exact process. Alright, and finally, 17. So I got 6k plus 18 is greater than or equal to negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, negative 2 9 times negative k, positive 2k. Subtract a 2k. get 4k plus 18 is greater than or equal to 6. Subtract 18. We get 4k is greater than or equal to negative 12. Divide by 4. Now here's where I see a lot of problems. So k is greater than or equal to negative 3. A lot of times you say, oh, I'm dividing and there's a negative, so I've changed the inequality. But look, this started out negative, stayed negative. It's because my dividing number wasn't negative. Okay, it's only when the number we divide by is negative. And you can see that because, say, I took that same problem and instead of subtracting the 2k, we decided to subtract 6k. And subtract the 6, we'd end up with 12 is greater than or equal to negative 4k. Then divide by negative 4. You get negative 3, but it wouldn't be greater than or equal to k, because then that would be different than this one. We would have to change the inequality, because now the bottom part here is negative. See, it went from positive to negative, so hopefully that helps you see the difference. And by the way, for this equation, we know it's just k equals negative 3, because they work the same way. So if we can solve an equation, we can solve an inequality. So then think about what's the main things that you would need to tell someone to teach them how to solve an inequality. And that's pretty much it.